Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points Monday night. And we have a big story at the top of the news. The Pannun plot. Why did Nikhil Gupta, the Indian so-called businessman, plead guilty? Was this a Dhurandhar-like plot that went wrong or a rogue undertaking, the real-life Dhurandhar? A risk that was worth taking or not? Indo-Pak cricket, an unequal rivalry. Is it the end of that hype around it? We'll tell you more on that too. But the big story that we are breaking right at the very top, the India-US trade deal is now likely to be signed next month. India's chief trade negotiator set to visit Washington next week. Legal agreement for the trade deal to be finalized soon. India-US trade deal's broad framework has already been finalized and made public. India-US expected now to ensure that the deal is in place by the middle of March. That's what we're being told. Karishma Asudani from Business Today joins us with more. Karishma, is there a timeline? We've kept hearing about the likelihood of deals being finalized. Is March now going to be the month where we expect a final agreement?
Rajdeep, the word that is coming in from Commerce Ministry is the term efforts and intent. That is what Trade Ministry officials have told us, that this is not about deadlines, which they've been reiterating for long, but the idea and focus is to keep March 2026 as their focus as their effort in order to at least close and sign the first tranche of the deal. Now, well, this month did bring in a lot of happy news with the joint statement coming in and finally consensus being seen between both the countries after a really long deadlock. And now what is really left is the legal scrutiny of this joint statement, which will be done by Indian officials. Chief negotiator from India, Darpan Jain, who will be visiting Washington likely early next week in order to work on this and ensure that things are in place. Let's not forget, we are still on the 25% tariff percentage, and we are hoping that this week we should come to 18.
Okay, Karishma Asudani joining us with that news point. Thanks very much for informing us. Okay, let's move on there. The fact is, while there is progress on Indo-US trade talks, there is still a shadow over Indo-US ties. The latest, after an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, pleaded guilty in the US court to charges for plotting the assassination of a Sikh separatist leader who lives in New York. The US Department of Justice now claims that Nikhil Gupta was hired by an Indian government official named Vikas Yadav. The government of India has so far kept a cryptic silence over it. But there is a larger question. Did the government of India sanction a hit on a Khalistani separatist living in America who's an American citizen? Or was this a rogue operation? What's the truth? That's what we're going to try and find out tonight. Is this Dhurandhar operation gone wrong, or is it a rogue operation? Take a look at our top story.
3 days after the US Department of Justice revealed that the Indian booked for the conspiracy to kill a Sikh separatist has pleaded guilty, the government of India is maintaining silence. The Department of Justice in a statement said Nikhil Gupta pleaded guilty to all 3 counts: murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The charges attract a maximum of 40 years in prison, but the judge will determine the term, which means the actual sentence could be much lower. US District Judge Victor Marrero is set to give the sentencing in May this year. Gupta was accused of hiring a hitman to assassinate Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, who lives in New York. According to the DOJ, in or about 2023, Gupta worked together with others in India and elsewhere, including Vikas Yadav, who was an Indian government employee, The indictment says Yadav was employed by the Government of India's Cabinet Secretariat, which houses the Research and Analysis Wing. In or about May 2023, Yadav recruited Gupta to carry out the assassination in the US. At Yadav's direction, Gupta contacted a criminal associate, who was in fact a confidential source working with the DEA. The source introduced Gupta to a purported hitman, who was in fact a DEA undercover officer. Yadav allegedly agreed to pay $100,000 to murder Pannun. On or about June 9, 2023, Yadav and Gupta allegedly arranged for an associate to deliver $15,000 in cash to the undercover officer as advance payment. In or about June 2023, Yadav provided Gupta with information about the target, which Gupta passed on to the undercover officer. According to the Department of Justice, Gupta specifically instructed the undercover officer not to commit the murder around the time of the Indian Prime Minister's official visit to the US, which was scheduled to begin on June 20th, 2023. On or about June 18th, 2023, masked gunmen murdered another Sikh separatist, Rajdeep Singh Nijjar, outside a Gurdwara in British Columbia, Canada. The Department of Justice claims that on June 19, 2023, Gupta told the undercover officer that Nijjar was also the target, and we have so many targets. Gupta added that there was now no need to wait on killing Pannun. On June 30th, 2023, Gupta was arrested in the Czech Republic. He was later extradited to the United States. After Gupta pleaded guilty, US Attorney J. Clayton said, "Our message to all nefarious foreign actors should be clear. Steer clear of the United States and our people." It is, however, not clear why Nikhil Gupta pleaded guilty instead of fighting the charges. Bureau Report, India Today.
Lots of questions that we will raise one by one, but my first guest tonight is A.S. Dulat, former Special Director of RAW, someone who headed RAW for years, also the former RAW chief, as I said. Joining me now is Mr. Dulat. Appreciate your joining us, sir. How do you see this Nikhil Gupta case playing out? The US Department of Justice press release clearly says Nikhil Gupta worked at the behest of an Indian government employee to arrange the murder of a Sikh separatist leader. Do you see this as an embarrassment for the government and the RNAW?
No, I don't know exactly what is happening, but I mean, if this fellow has confessed and turned an approver, then it could mean anything, you know. He may have been a plant all along.
Are you saying, as the Indian government sources are now claiming this was a rogue operation, can we just go with that? Or do you believe, given the voluminous documents now available with the US authorities, this was a covert operation launched by possibly RAW that went horribly wrong?
Well, if it's gone wrong, then yeah, it has gone horribly wrong. But I would go along with the government version here that I feel, and I felt earlier also, that this fellow could have been a plant, you know. The ease in which he is confessing and has become an approver means that he could have been a plant all along and fooled us.
But whose plant could he have been? Why would Nikhil Gupta be a plant of anyone other than the government?
Obviously an American plant.
So you're saying that, you know, he could be a US plant, but at the end of the day, I want to repeat what the Department of Justice United States statement is saying based on the FBI investigation. The fact is, an individual has pleaded guilty to plotting the assassination of a US citizen, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, a Khalistani separatist. Could such an operation prima facie have taken place without someone in the Indian government authorizing it? Could an individual like Nikhil Gupta simply hire someone and do it on his own?
Yeah, but there's another question here which arises. How did, in the first instance, there was no assassination attempt or anything. How, in the first instance, did the Americans know that there was a threat to Gurpatwant Singh or whatever his name is? How did they know? It could have been the same fellow, Nikhil Gupta, who was telling them
So the fact
what
is,
they wanted to
the
know.
fact is, sir, the report suggests, some reports suggest that there is a new muscular Indian strategy in such operation, that we will take out people who are involved in activities against India, whether they are based in US or Canada. If we see them, identify them as separatists or terrorist group, do you believe that these kind of attempts, extraterritorial, can be justified? Or are we on a slippery slope if that is going to be the approach of the government of India?
No, no, I would never justify that. And I don't believe we have done these things. I've all along said this. I don't believe we've never done it. I've been in the business myself and we've never done these things. And I don't believe we are doing this now also. And if this was some kind of an operation, then it was a terrible operation. That's all I can say.
You're saying, but sir, across the world, Israel's Mossad, USA's CIA are known to conduct such covert operations. Only in most cases they don't get caught. But are you saying that there is a red line that India must draw, that these are not operations that Indian government should get involved or sanction at any level? Am I correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have never got involved, and I don't think we are involved.
So you are categorically saying time and again that we are not involved, but I will ask you again, why should America cook up such a case? We have a strong relationship with the Americans. Why would they cook up such a case that only ends up embarrassing the Indian government that has seen an Indian national now facing a potentially very long period behind bars? Even if you do an operation, you don't get caught. That's the rule of the spy world.
But he's done it himself, hasn't he? He's confessed himself. He says that he was involved. That's why I suspect he could have been a plant all along. He could have been a US agent all along or a CIA agent all along. Whereas
So,
we thought that he was working for us, if he was in
but
touch
if,
with somebody.
But if he was so innocent, Mr. Dulat, should he not have fought the charges instead of pleading guilty in the US court? When he pleads guilty, obviously to offset some of the punishment he will get. The fact is, I repeat, all of this is based on documentation, investigation that the US authorities have carried out. How can we dismiss it casually?
Well, you're saying the same thing in a different way from what I'm saying. That where, how, and why has he confessed so easily? And why at this point of time? I mean, this story is not happened just today or yesterday. It's 3 years old or whatever. So how did it take so long, and why the timing at this point of time? And yeah.
No, no, but sir, he has also named an individual called Vikas Yadav. They say that he was an Indian government employee allegedly working in the cabinet secretariat. He's the one who hired Nikhil Gupta, who then hired a killer to bump off Pannu. There is an Indian angle which leads right up to the doorstep of the government, sir.
I don't know whether it leads to the doorstep of our government, but who is this fellow Yadav? Has he
So
been
Yadav,
identified? Do we know who he is? Except that there used to be mention of somebody called CC1.
sir, Yadav is specifically mentioned in the US documentation. The fact that is the Indian government says he's no longer in service. The fact is, it could either be a rogue operation conducted without any authorization at any level, is what you seem to suggest. But is that really possible? Can rogue operations of this nature take place without someone in the Indian government at the higher levels knowing about this?
No, I don't believe that, but I don't say, at the same time, as I say, we've never been involved in these kind of operations. trying to bump off somebody in a third country, and that also in the United States? Why would we do it? As you say, we have a good relationship with the Americans. Why would we do it? And Pannu, in any case, was not bumped off. There was no attack on him. So how did anybody come to know that he was under threat?
But let me substantiate what I just said. The fact is, 2 years ago, Canada raised a red flag about another Khalistani leader, Nijjar, who was killed in 2023. They pointed fingers at India. It destroyed Indo-Canadian relationships. They alleged Indian government had hired the Lawrence Bishnoi gang to carry out this killing. So there seems to be a pattern.
Yeah, I remember that Nijjar case, and it was unfortunate, however it happened or whatever. But I had said at that point also that we don't do these things. We don't get involved in these things, you know.
So you say we don't, you're saying we don't do these things. Now that could have been when you were in charge at RAW. Things may have changed. There are those who believe that within the present Modi government, there are those who feel there is a need for a more muscular policy in dealing with terrorists and separatists, even if it means possibly these hired assassinations.
So if things have changed so dramatically, then you have to ask people who are in the business now, you know. But I still don't believe that our organization could be involved in this kind of nonsense. It makes no sense. It achieves nothing. Tell me, by bumping off Nijjar or Pannu, what do we gain? There has to be a gain somewhere, no? We had so many opportunities to, for instance, to give you an example, to bump off Gilani in Kashmir, who was much more of a nuisance. But we didn't do it. We didn't touch a Kashmiri. No Kashmiri was targeted or killed by us. Whereas Pakistan kept killing Kashmiris. Whoever fell out with them was bumped off.
Did you, let me ask you honestly, did you ever plan to do a similar operation on Dawood Ibrahim, one of India's most wanted, based in Pakistan and Dubai? Honest answer, was that ever planned?
No way, no. How would you do it? And okay, now you've got it. Now you talk about a muscular policy. Then why have we not got Dawood? Tell me. Or why have we not attempted getting at Dawood? Is it that we have more capability in America and Canada than in Pakistan? It makes no sense at all.
So I'm asking you that, have we chosen to do, you know, if Israel was confronted with a Dawood-like problem, they would have probably gone ahead and at least attempted to take him out. Are you saying that in India, a red line is clearly drawn by the political executive?
Of course there is a red line. And of course, these are political decisions ultimately. You know, you or I or nobody else can do it on their own. If the top brass doesn't want it, it won't be done. And if they want it, then why has Dawood not been targeted all this while? What you're suggesting then is that we have greater capability in the United States and in Canada than in Pakistan. And that is, again, difficult to believe.
So may I just ask you in conclusion, why you would say we don't need real-life Dhurandhars, am I correct? That real-life Dhurandhars only exist on cinema, not in real life, where you go into Pakistan, for example, and take out someone.
You're right. This is cinema.
Okay. On that note, I appreciate you joining us, Mr. Dulat, because you've set the stage for my big talking point. Why did Nikhil Gupta then plead guilty in a US court? Is this a secret operation that went wrong and India cannot in any way acknowledge it? Was this a mission run by a rogue officer? Is this a real-life Dhurandhar case a risk, or is it worth it? Can the government of India distance itself from such a plot when the US claims they have confirmed evidence of it? Joining me now, Dr. Tara Karta is former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, KC Singh, former Indian diplomat, and Glenn Carle is former officer in CIA's Directorate of Operations, author The Interrogator. I appreciate all of you joining us. Tara Karta, your first reactions to the Nikhil Gupta case and the fact that he's made this confession and the US statement which says that he did it on the bidding of an Indian government official.
My first reaction was that right at the beginning was that this was another David Headley. He's a DA agent. You've got tons of these DA guys, they're moles roaming around doing their secret operations for them. And this is documented in the US National Security Archives where DEA agents were involved in, those cases. In the Contra scandal in Afghanistan, that was my immediate reaction. But I want to say something here. This character, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, he was fully operative when we knew about this guy, right? He was a joke. If anybody had told me, listen, we need to assassinate this guy, I would have fallen off my chair laughing. He was simply not worth it. That is my view. As there are hundreds of others. I'm not going to name them.
So then why, so are you saying this entire story has been cooked up by the US at the highest level?
No. I'm not saying that at all. If you trace it, which I have done, date by date, there was the killing of Nijjar. I mean, look at that document which you're quoting. This guy tells this undercover agent that, don't kill Nijjar just now because Prime Minister's coming. 2 days before PM visits, Nijjar is killed. Then he tells him, now you go ahead. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Nijjar is fine. As of, in fact, 3 days ago, one couple from Canada has fled Canada because of extortion threats by the Bishnoi and one more Bimbihar gang. There are 2-3 gangs, not two,
That's
three,
right.
there's lots more. That's just 3 days ago. So that gang warfare has been going on for decades. That is intertwined with narcotics. Okay, so that whole thing is operating there, and that for some reason, now this is what I want to know. Who actually killed him 2 days before the Prime Minister was to arrive in the US? Somebody bumps off Nijjar. Okay, so I want to know more about that.
Okay.
And then this guy says, okay, let's go bump off Pannun now. Pannun was not worth killing. Someone.
Let me take what you are saying to Glenn Carle. He's a former officer in CIA's directorate. As you are seeing, there's skepticism in India over this US Department of Justice investigation. There are reports suggesting that this was an operation carried out by Nikhil Gupta, hired an assassin at the behest of a government officer, Mr. Yadav. Could he have been a plant, as is being suggested?
No, it's extremely unlikely that that be the case. The evidence is from multiple sources. The Department of Justice doesn't take any instructions from the CIA or the DEA or the NSA, which seems to have intercepted some communications. So the critical question is the motive. What motive would there be for the United States or part of the United States to do this? None of that adds up at all. The pattern of events and responses by the various governments and players is classic, however. If a government gets caught in an intelligence operation that has gone wrong, then of course it will say, oh my goodness, Glenn Carle he wasn't following orders. He seems to have lost his head. He was a rogue. He had his own partisan, personal objectives he was trying to pursue under the umbrella of the United States, when in fact, no, we would never have anything to do with this. Oh, so sorry. And that's exactly what the Indian government has said, which is the standard thing that one does when one gets caught in an intelligence operation. You change the subject, deny, and then remain silent. That's what happened. And the United States, in this instance, has simply done some police and intelligence work, the two overlapping in this case. And if the man why would he have pled guilty? I do not know the twists and turns of the trial and the process, but most likely he was offered or presented with alternative futures, which is if you plead guilty, your sentence will be probably much shorter. You might be pardoned or released for good behavior, and if not, you'll be stuck in prison for much, much longer.
Let me bring in KC Singh. KC Singh, either way, this is an embarrassment. Now, you could argue this was an intelligence operation that went wrong, so the government has no option but to say that Nikhil Gupta is a rogue, you distance yourself from him. Or the fact is that this is now part of our policy, that we are looking, whether it's the Nijjar case or the Pannun case, we are possibly entering a very, very dangerous terrain, which when it goes wrong, it becomes embarrassing.
Well, let's look at it. It first began with Canada. A relationship went completely downhill. Of course, Prime Minister Trudeau was at fault because he jumped the gun and leveled an allegation when he didn't have documentation at that stage. In retrospect, it appears the Americans had passed on the information. I think they were monitoring what Gupta was doing, and as yet, because they had not grabbed him, they were not willing to give all the information. They're keeping Canadians from sharing any details. So the Indian thing was the Canadians are leveling charges without any information. Now, since then, a relationship with Canada. Now, why would two governments, one after the other, come after India on this particular subject? Now, I'm not saying the government of India is involved, but certainly it requires some examination, some investigation at our end. There were some reports in the media that one officer has retired and he's no longer with a particular agency. Whatever it is, if somebody went rogue, because after all, the Americans have phone numbers, their agents claim to have spoken to the Indian person handling Gupta, etc. Let's share the information. They should share the information, find out whose phone was being used, from wherever these calls made. We've heard nothing from the Indian side. So the way to handle
why
this...
are the Americans going seemingly out of their way to make this a case wherein they want to directly implicate India?
Look, as you just now heard, it's the Department of Justice. And Americans would like a lever to keep you pressed. And if there is a confession by Gupta, they may have more information. And, that information can be used slyly in your bilateral relations. That is a problem in a case like this. That if it goes higher up the chain, then it becomes a pressure point. That's why it's important for India to conduct an investigation and make the outcome public and say, this is the person, these were the phone calls, and this is the person who's involved, and you'll have to try him. Otherwise, tomorrow the Americans may ask for his extradition.
Right.
That complicates things further. But if you're trying a person, you can say, we are trying him for a crime here. So there's no question of extraditing him. We haven't done that. We don't even know if there's such a person. So if the Americans are lying and the agencies have no information, then we should say so. But if they are saying that a particular person was making phone calls, it was after all going from some number. After all, $15,000 have been passed, etc. So who made that money available? Gupta would be answering that.
Can I just bring in? Yeah. I've heard you. Can I just bring in Tarakanta at this point? Tarakanta, you see, the details of this case is what should worry India, surely. I mean, as is being said, you can never acknowledge a secret operation that's gone wrong given the stakes involved. But it almost seems as if India has decided that, we don't want to touch Nikhil Gupta, even as Nikhil Gupta seems to be perhaps only exposing more and more details.
No, I think I was slightly misunderstood. I didn't say that the US was trying to get us into a hole. I mean, maybe they are, but that's not what I said. But I'm just saying that, see, we cooperated with them on this so-called this Yadav case. There was, unlike Canada, which didn't present us with any evidence and just kept ranting in public, the US did quietly give us some details, and there was a lot of cooperation going on. That guy, I think, was subsequently arrested for an extortion case, again involving the
so that he could not be extradited. You see, that's the question. The US wants him extradited. We put out another case so that we can avoid extradition.
See, the thing is, okay, that is, maybe that's true. But an assistant commandant in a CRPF attached to RAW, who was at the time involved in a case for his promotion in CAT, he carries out an assassination. I mean, it is so unbelievable that it's like what shall I say? I can't think how it possibly could happen. That's why I'm saying there is something we are missing out.
What is that? Okay, you're saying there's something that's missing. Let me take that to my guest from the United States, Glenn Carle. Glenn, does this happen often? could this, what is it that we are missing in all of this? It seems rather bad. An assistant commandant of CRPF is hiring someone who's supposedly a businessman. He pays off someone in the United States to carry on this operation of Pannun, who's not necessarily someone who's India's most wanted. Why do you think this would happen? What are we missing?
Well, that's a good question. First, I think Ambassador Singh raised a point that I think is worth expanding on a little bit, that bears on your question just a second, which is that there's a good possibility that the Mr. Gupta is serving as a circuit breaker at this point by pleading guilty, that in the negotiations or discussions between the prosecutors and Gupta and his defense attorneys, and then indirectly with the Indian government, of course, it could well have been said that, well, listen, we have, as quite clearly seems to be the case, the intercepts of telephone calls and telephone numbers and names of people, and we can fit them into the structures of the RAW's operations or the governments and so on. And we don't really want to have all of this blow up and get worse and worse and worse. And so it would be a wise thing for Mr. Gupta to plead guilty and put an end to this. And that fits with the standard pattern of the Indian government's response, which is, oh my goodness, this is a rogue and let's turn our eyes to something else because it just couldn't possibly happen. End of story. That's the first part. The second part, what is we missing? And that's another good question. Assassinations are really sexy in the movies and so on, but they have so many fraught possibilities and unintended consequences that usually come to pass in some way beyond the control of the perpetrating government, that they are really unwise things to do. And it's taken, no one will believe what I say now, but it's taken as an article of faith that the CIA runs around the world assassinating people, but that is not true. It is true in 1942 that the US provided a weapon that assassinated a French official during World War II, and that we tried to assassinate Castro, miserably failing. The targeted killings are clearly lethal operations, but are not the same as hiring a hitman to kill someone. And there is a clear assessment made that the costs so dramatically outweigh the benefits that it becomes just what you say, a question of, well, why in the world would someone do this? Now, it does seem, however, and this I don't know for a fact, but it does seem that the RAW or the Indian government in recent years, very recently, in the last several years, in the last part of Modi's time in office, has become more aggressive in this kind of operation against dissidents and separatists and so on. So that does seem to be the case.
Okay, that's a thought you're leaving us with. I appreciate my guest joining us. Clearly, this is a case which leaves plenty of questions unanswered, and we hope that we will get some clarity. Remember, this is not a real-life Dhurandhar case, because this is actually a case that has possibly blown up in the face of the Indian government. I appreciate my guest, though, joining me on my talking point. I want to turn from there to our ground report today, which is from Telangana, where a tribal festival turned ugly when a Muslim vendor was publicly humiliated. Sheikh Shaiska Wali, selling khova buns, was confronted on camera by a group of YouTubers who forced him to eat his own products, claiming that this was an example of food jihad. The incident has sparked widespread outrage online and even forced the Andhra government to step in. Take a look.
At one of India's largest tribal festivals, a moment of celebration turned into controversy. A Muslim food vendor was publicly harassed on camera, accused of food jihad, in the middle of Medarma Jataru in Mulugu, Telangana. YouTuber harassed Sheikh Shawali, demanding he show his Aadhaar card. He forced him to eat khova buns he was selling. Wali had come from Communal in Andhra Pradesh to take part in festival.
నమస్తే సార్ నిన్న జిల్లా వెలుగోడు సార్ మాది గత నెల నేను సమగ్ర సాగర్ యాకపోయాను సార్ నేను పోయింటే ఆ సార్ ఎక్స్పర్ట్ డేట్ అడుగుతాను సార్ నేను చెప్పిన సార్ ఎక్స్పర్ట్ డేట్ ఉండదు సార్ అని అడిగినా సార్ అది 10 రోజులు సార్ అది వ్యాపారం చెప్పినా సార్ నేను 10 రోజులు 4 రోజులు 5 రోజులు చెప్పినా సార్ నేను వ్యాపారం సార్ చెప్పుంటే ఆ సారు ఎస్పటి ఇది ఆధార్ అడుగును సార్ ఆధార్ టెస్ట్ కూడా సార్ నేను మర్చిపోయినా అడిగిన సార్ నేను టెస్ట్ ఉంటే ఇది దీంట్లో ఏం కలుపుతా అన్నాను సార్ ఆయన మేము చెప్పినాం సారు పాలు చక్కెర రవ్వ అని చెప్పినాం సార్ మేము.
The incident triggered social media outrage. Andhra Pradesh Deputy Chief Minister Nara Lokesh said he was sorry for Wali's troubles and promised to meet him. AIMIM Chief Asaduddin Owaisi condemned the incident.
कौन है भाई ये लोग? तेलंगाना में मेडारम जातरा में वो तो सब लोग आते उसमें, और इन्हों कौन होते कानून को अपने हाथ में लेने? ये कौन है यूट्यूबर जो एक मुसलमान को बदनाम करना चाहते हैं? पुलिस की जिम्मेदारी है, यहाँ की हुकूमत की जिम्मेदारी है कि खिलाफ एक्शन लो यूट्यूबरों के खिलाफ.
What should have been a festival of faith and devotion instead exposed the dark side of communal profiling, reminding us that even amidst millions of devotees, intolerance can strike at smallest stall. Bureau Report, India Today.
Extremely unfortunate and completely unacceptable. Pakistan crumbled in a rather one-sided contest against India. Pakistani fans are erupting in raw anger. The TV Todo moment has returned. Furious fans venting out their frustration on the team. Memes flooded the internet and social media, and even former cricketers want massive changes in the Pakistani team. Is the great rivalry between India and Pakistan now simply a no contest? We'll look at that, but first take a look at this report.
Pakistan is in complete meltdown after the crushing loss to India. On the field, Team India delivered total dominance. A clinical one-sided masterclass that sealed a 61-run victory, India's biggest ever win over Pakistan in T20 cricket in terms of runs. The result powers India into the Super 8s as they extend their record against them in T20 World Cups to 8-1. The defeat also exposed Pakistan's pre-match boycott drama, ending instead in a night of embarrassment, with PCB chief Mohsin Naqvi leaving the stadium early as Pakistan slipped to 78 for 6 while chasing 176.
There were plans that Mr. Mohsin Naqvi had made of probably inviting the Sri Lankan president over to his VIP box and then taking him to the dressing room of the Pakistan team. So those were the grand plans that Mr. Mohsin Naqvi had, but eventually he left the stadium even before the final rights were written.
Back home, the Green Army's collapse triggered fury and disbelief. Former Pakistan skippers led the backlash. Shahid Afridi and Shoaib Malik questioning strike rates, team balance and senior players' failure to perform. Anger and embarrassment deepen. Pakistan's boycott bluster dies in complete shambles. With Nikhil Naz, Sports Bureau, India Today.
Okay, let's get views from both sides of the border. Shishir Hattangadi, former Mumbai captain, joins me. And Javed Qureshi, former Pakistani under-19 captain, is with me. Thanks both very much. Javed, let me come to you first.
Good
Loss
evening,
to India often leads to overreactions, but it seems that Pakistan now simply can't handle the pressure of playing against India. It seems that, is it a question of not handling pressure or just not being good enough anymore?
I think it's a bit of both. We certainly struggle when it comes to handling the pressure, which is unlike the previous teams. And I think we've started to get a talent problem. You know, we just don't have the players anymore. When you look at the Indian team, man to man, they're a first-rate unit. Pakistan is disappointing, right? So I think it's a bit of both. I think we've got to get back to invest in our cricket and get our system right and start to throw players. If you look at the Pakistan team, it's the same old players just being recycled. Whereas you look at the Indian team, they're producing 2-3 fresh faces every 6 months. And when that happens...
It's a talent deficit come unable to handle the pressure. Shishir Hattangadi on the other side, therefore, should we be hyping it up even as this great rivalry? It seems that India at the moment is in another league. That's very different to what it used to be all those years ago when it was a very closely fought rivalry. Often Pakistan would win. Do you believe now that India is simply playing at another level compared to Pakistan, and Pakistan needs to come to terms with the fact that they're just not good enough?
Well, if you won eight games in the ICC tournament and lost only one, there's every reason to believe that you're far ahead in terms of your skills as a cricket team. And I mean, it's high time everybody just shuts off the noise and focuses on cricket, which India played much better than Pakistan. And there could be various reasons, but I think at the moment they suffer from a huge inferiority complex because of the continual embarrassment that they face after losing a game. Losing a game is one thing, but then the backlash of it with former players, with the media. I mean, it's expected that they lose. They're not a great side. Let's accept that first. After that, you'll have former players really getting after them, and they suffer from an inferiority complex. And when you are suffering from an inferiority complex on a field of play, it's very hard for you to come out of it because you know that you're not in the moment. You're thinking about what will happen after the moment because inevitably you lose a game. And then you're worried about what the backlash is all going to be. I mean, Mr. Naqvi walking off halfway through the game is just indicative of the fact that when your team is losing, you need backers. You don't need people to walk away from you. And this is where I think the problem is. Let's forget the frozen diplomacy, the media rights, the money coming in from the game. All this will go eventually. The media rights and the money, once the price from a high ticket, big ticket game goes off, you're not going to draw that kind of money. Today we are talking about it. We are hyping up a game of cricket because there's a huge amount of money coming in from advertising and broadcasting. But that's going to eventually die.
Javed, therefore, would Pakistan want the hype to be dialed down? Is that actually in the best interest of Pakistan? That Pakistan needs to start coming to terms. India seems to now treat the game against Pakistan as just another game, where because of their superiority, Pakistan seems to be feeling the heat and the pressure far more because of what happens off the field.
No, Pakistan always gets Pakistan always faces a tough time when it loses. But, the way that we're losing is now really unacceptable. Yesterday's game, Pakistan barely turned up. And that's what people here don't appreciate. And I think that, Pakistan's got to get back to basics. It's something wrong with its cricket structure. It's not producing the players it used to produce anymore. And somebody needs to put a plan against it. And instead of focusing on all the other things, we should really be focusing on getting our cricket right, getting our basics right. If you can't take the pressure, then find people who can. And you've got to be tough with some of these players. I'm not quite sure what Shaheen Afridi was doing in this team. Babar is, probably still playing, but more on reputation. And, Pakistan's tactics yesterday also, I'm not quite sure what they were doing. They had a bad day. Captain had a bad day too. That didn't help.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We can go on endlessly about, what ails Pakistan cricket. About 20, 25 years ago, we'd asked the same question about India, and that's the cycle of the game. But I appreciate both my guests joining me from across the border. Maybe we'll have a longer discussion in the course of this tournament. I want to leave you, though, with a good news today's story. A baby, barely 10 months of age, has become Kerala's youngest organ donor, giving life to 5 people, even as the baby was laid to rest with state honors. The family that decided to allow the hospital authorities to harvest these organs is being lauded for the noble act. Baby Arlene's case spotlights the need for more awareness around the shortage of organs in India and the need to come forward to help patients in dire need. I leave you with tonight's good news story. Good night. Shubhratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
10-month-old baby Arlene laid to rest with full state honors. A mark of respect to an act that deserves just so much appreciation. The 10-month-old baby, Arlene Sharon Abraham, was declared brain dead on the 13th of February after meeting with a road accident. In an act of magnanimity, her family, who escaped with injuries in the same accident, agreed to donate the infant's organs.
The baby's organs has given life to 5. Liver to a 6-month-old baby in Thiruvananthapuram. Sharon also donated 2 kidneys, a heart valve as well as her eyeballs. Kerala Health Minister Veena George also attended the last rites.
The youngest organ donor in the state. So from the deepness of their grief and their sorrow, so it is quite I don't know how to describe that. So it's such an act which shows love and care for humanity, which is a model for many others.
Others thanked the grieving parents and lauded them for this brave act.
With this gesture, baby Aline has become the youngest organ donor in Kerala. In India, as per the government data, 3,000 people died in the last 5 years waiting for organs. Right now, the list is a very long one of patients waiting for organs. About 82,000 patients across India are waiting for some sort of the organ or the other. There's a huge demand for kidneys, for example, with 60,000 plus patients waiting. 18,000 plus patients are waiting for liver. In India, the donor rate is also poor at 1 per million population. Doctors are relying heavily on live donations. Patients, in fact, who are getting these organs from their family members. But the essential part of this is to stress on cadaver donations, which is donations from the deceased.
Retrieval of the body organs by the specialist should be available at all district levels and at least medical colleges of the country. This department should be developed because we are lacking that infrastructure also. That is again a problem.
Baby Aline's humanitarian gesture sends a powerful message of helping those while in dire need. With Bureau Inputs, Sneha Mordani in New Delhi for India Today Television.